All right, I think we'll get started then. I want to thank everybody for coming today. My name is Dylan Carey. I'm Project Director for Parks and Trails New York, and I'm excited to welcome you all to Bicyclist Spring Business 2021. Today, we're going to talk about the Village of Ilion, New York. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce Assemblyman Brian Miller, who represents New York's 101st Assembly District, which includes Ilion and its encompassing town of German Flats within its bounds. Assemblyman Miller has been in the New York State Assembly since 2017, before which he served in the Oneida County Legislature and as supervisor of the town of Bridgewater. Brian has more than 36 years experience as a mechanical engineer, and we were thrilled to have the Assemblyman join us on our bike round in late August, something we're going to talk about more later in the presentation. Assemblyman Miller?
Well, thank you, Dylan. It's great to be here. My name is Brian Miller, and as representative of the 101st Assembly District, which is comprised of parts of Oneida, Herkimer, Otsego, Delaware, Ulster, Sullivan, and Orange counties, pretty much the whole state. I'm honored to speak with you today. I'd like to give a big thank you to the Parks Trails New York as host, and to partners from New York State Canal Corporation and Herkimer County HealthNet for putting this event together. A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of riding around the Village of Ilion, participating in their annual Bicyclists Spring Business event, which helps illuminate the factors that both encourage and deter cyclists from leaving the Erie Canalway Trail and making their way into our canal side communities. There is an exciting opportunity in the Mohawk Valley to capitalize on trail-related tourism with the completion of the Erie Canalway and the Empire State Trail. It is important that we continue to think about how this trail can help boost local economies and encourage active, healthy lifestyles. This past year and a half, one of the things that's happened because of COVID, and this is a good thing, is that the great outdoors and our trail systems have been used much more. Through programs like Bicyclists Spring Business, Parks and Trails New York is able to provide community leaders with a set of resources and recommendations to both attract and retain trail users and help communities take advantage of trail-based tourism to help grow local economies. I hope this is something that will continue long after the pandemic has subsided, not only to encourage economic growth, but to encourage our community to be active and healthy. Thank you to all who support these tremendous trails. And now I would like to hand it over to Dylan Carey, Project Director for Parks and Trails New York.
Thank you, Assembly Member, and I want to thank you again for joining us today and for having joined us back a couple of weeks ago when we went on the ride. And I want to thank everybody who's joined us today from the audience as well. For more than a decade now, Parks and Trails New York has hosted Bicyclist Spring Business in a community along the Canalway Trail. We call it B3. And B3 provides resources and recommendations to help local businesses, elected officials, tourism professionals, and community members discover what services and amenities are important to bicyclists and what their community can do to better attract and profit from the growing bicycle tourism market. Now, the communities we've worked with have found that modest investments can result in a substantial boost for tourism. These modest investments focus on services that are particularly important to bicyclists, things such as lodging and campsites, local maps, luggage transportation, bicycle repairs, and bicycle security. At first, B3 was just a workshop. We focused on sharing out information, just spreading the idea that attracting bicycle tourists can and should be part of a community's economic development strategy. This year, we selected Ilion to host our workshop in, and that's what we're here for today. We're going to hear more in a bit about the projects that were done to construct some new stretches of the Empire State Trail through the Mohawk Valley last year. But with those new stretches of trail opening, we felt that Ilion and its neighboring communities have a lot of potential to draw in visiting cyclists based on their proximity to the trail, their historical significance, and the availability of services and amenities. Now, after having done B3 for a couple of years, we realized that just telling everybody about the economic potential of cyclists wasn't enough. We needed to go in person and see the potential and see the challenges within a community to really take stock of what the community offers a visiting cyclist. And this led to the inclusion of the bike round as part of B3. As part of the bike round, we conduct an assessment to understand the current conditions on the ground in a community and to look what should be done to make a community more attractive to bicycle tourists. I'm going to go through the bike round that we did a little bit more in detail later in the presentation, but we had this bike round in late August, this bike round assessment of Ilion. And I want to thank everybody who joined us for that. We had representatives from the New York State Department of Transportation, from the New York State Canal Corporation and New York Power Authority. Assemblyman Miller joined us as well. We had the town supervisor from the town of German Flats, Peter Ravazzi. We had Dick Liu, who runs Dick's Wheel Shop, which is a local bike shop in Herkimer. We also had Allison from Herkimer County HealthNet and Tom Weirs, a local bike advocate. So before we jump into the meat of the program, I just want to take a moment to go through some quick housekeeping items. You can ask questions through the chat or through the Q&A section of Zoom. And we'll do our best to answer any time-sensitive questions in real time. Rebecca from the Parks and Trails New York team is monitoring the Q&A. If your question doesn't get answered during the Q&A during the presentation, we are having a Q&A segment at the end of the webinar. If it doesn't get answered during that section, we're going to follow up with you after the webinar, either tomorrow or early next week. Now, the webinar is scheduled for 2 hours. We don't expect to have that whole time taken up with presentations. We want to leave time for questions at the end, or maybe we'll get to dinner a little early. We're also recording the event. We're going to put it up on our YouTube page, and we're going to share out the link to this recording to all the registrants, and it'll be shared on PTNY and Erie Canalway Trail social media pages as well. If you have any technical issues during the event, please contact Rebecca Murray. Her email's on the slide. You can also send her a message via the chat, and she's going to try to help you resolve the issue. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the amazing work of the PTNY staff who made this event possible, Erica Schneider and Rebecca Murray. I also want to thank our partners with Reimagine the Canals at the New York State Canal Corporation and the New York Power Authority. Sasha Del Peral, who's the trail manager, also Angelin Chandler and Rebecca Hughes, who joined us for the bike round, and Connie Cullen, who I believe has joined us on the webinar today. So what exactly can you expect to hear this evening? Well, first, you're going to hear from Sasha, who's the trail manager with the Canal Corporation. Sasha's going to give us an overview of how multi-use trails, such as the Erie Canalway Trail and Empire State Trail, have served as outlets during the pandemic, and how this trail and other trails have the potential to help communities they run through benefit from trail-related tourism. Next, you're going to hear from me again, walking through some of the research that has supported our work on bicyclist spring business over the years, including the economic potential of bicycle tourism specific to the Erie Canalway Trail. And while the health impact's certainly a motivating factor, or the economic impact's a motivating factor, there is a health component as well that should help drive further investment in our outdoor recreation opportunities. And for that piece, I'm going to hand it over to Allison Schwartz, who's project coordinator for Herkimer County HealthNet. Finally, I'll go through the assessment that we conducted in Ilion and the set of recommendations that we're going to share with you today. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through every recommendation in detail. We are going to have a full report available in the upcoming weeks that we're going to share out with everybody electronically. We are going to reserve some time at the end for questions, as I said. However, do feel free to ask the questions in real time. And if there's ones we're able to ask on the fly, we'll do so. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Sasha Del Peral, who is the trail manager for the New York State Canal Corporation. Sasha?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I want to start off by thanking Parks and Trails New York for organizing this evening's event. Really looking forward to hearing from you. And I also want to acknowledge Assemblymember Miller and Supervisor Ravazzi for their enthusiastic in the process, and also for their support as we continue to pursue the recommendations laid out in the forthcoming Ilion Bicyclist Spring Business Report. So before we jump into the assessment and recommendations, which Dylan Carey will do, I want to talk about the canal and the Canalway Trail as an economic engine and their recent investments and initiatives we've undertaken at the state level to highlight this asset. So 4 years ago, the state announced the establishment of the Empire State Trail, a $200 million investment to connect New York City to the Canadian border and Albany to Buffalo via multi-use trails, That's 750 miles of multi-use trails that we're talking about. So a big investment, a big project, a big undertaking. But fortunately for the Canal Corporation, we already had most of our trail complete, especially from Albany to Buffalo. So that meant that we really only had 15 projects to close all of our existing gaps. But the gaps that remained in 2017 when this initiative was announced were pretty challenging ones, including a pretty large gap in the Mohawk Valley. Here on the map, you can see a cluster, but we're zooming in. Utilizing the Empire State Trail money, we had 7 trail construction projects in the Mohawk Valley region, totaling 21 miles between Rome and Little Falls. We also had, within that, we had 2 projects that ran right along the Ilion waterfront, leading from Frankfort and connecting into the Mohawk Trail. And that was 3 miles of new trail that was built just last year. And honestly, this investment couldn't have come at a more critical time. With COVID, I know I myself sought the outdoors as a way to kind of escape and release some stress. It was also my gym when the gym was closed. So this, coupled with the new connectivity in the area, resulted in a 114% increase in trail use just in the Mohawk Valley area alone. This is according to a trail counter that PTNY placed in German Flats from 2019 to the end of 2020. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see part of the chart that was generated by PTNY's Who's on the Trail report, where they lay out annual trail usage and provide data collected by strategically placed trail counters. Utilizing PTNY's trail collection data, we also saw similar trends across the Canal corridor. 4 years ago, through the Who's on the Trail report that PTNY generated, annual trail usage was at 1.4 million. In 2019, we saw 3 million visitors. And last year, we saw 4 million visitors total on the Erie Canalway Trail. That's a 30% increase over 2019 usage figures. So it's really incredible. And what this tells me is, if we build connectivity, people will come, and that we've also engaged a new audience. We've brought new people to the trail, and that also the public does see the trail as a recreational resource. And so what we've kind of capitalized on that through Reimagine. We're engaging new people through a number of efforts, but two of which have been our summer canal excursions, our On the Canal excursions program, and our camping and glamping programs. Over the last 2 summers, we've offered 10 packaged canal experiences throughout the corridor. We did free kayaking and hydro bike tours on the canal in Medina, a bike tour in wine country on the Cayuga Seneca Trail, and a trip between Port Jackson and the historic Yankee Hill Lock in the Mohawk Valley, which had nearly 400 participants over a 2-month span just this summer. We also hosted glamping sites at 5 sites across the system. They're really beautiful. You can see a photo of it on the slide. And these programs were incredibly successful, as I mentioned, but many of them booked up months in advance. And by the end of the summer, we had over 3,000 participants. This program was so successful that we plan on doing a fall excursion. We've announced one already in Brockport, and it already has 300 people signed up for it. And we also plan to do winter excursions. So that's something that we have in the pipeline. And as I mentioned, I feel like we have a good problem. We have a renewed interest in domestic travel. We have a lot of people visiting the trail. But the question now is, how do we create better accessibility? How do we encourage more people to come, to stay, to spend? And how do we translate trail visitation into community and business growth? And that kind of leads me into the Bicyclists Bring Business. This is a great first step to recognizing this potential. And the report the PTNY will generate for Ilion will help lay out the short and long-term strategies and investments that Ilion can make to create a more bike-friendly community and recognize the economic potential of outdoor recreation right in your area. I'm going to pass it back off to Dylan to talk about the economic potential of bike tourism, and look forward to hearing more of PTNY's recommendations.
Thank you, Sasha. As Sasha mentioned, I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes about the economic potential of cycle tourism and also what the Erie Canalway Trail can, how that can serve as a driver of economic, social, and health improvements, although Allison's going to talk more about the health aspect. I'm going to talk briefly about why you as a community should care about bicycle tourists. What is the economic potential? Who are these bicycle tourists? And so there's a handful of different definitions for what a bicycle tourist is. There's some that use a more strict definition about having to stay overnight, but we prefer a broader definition. Any travel related activity for the purpose of pleasure, which incorporates a bicycle. There's a lot of cycle tourists out there. It's 48 million people in the United States who bicycle recreationally each year. And this significantly impacts the national economy to the tune of almost $100 billion a year and growing. And as Sasha talked about, and as the assembly member talked about, many people this year have gotten out on bikes with the restrictions due to COVID. And as that's limited our options for other pastimes, people are experiencing these bike trails for the first times. They're exploring and discovering these assets in their communities. And pretty much every community across the country has reported seeing an increase in cyclists using bike trails. So who are these cycle travelers? Well, since 2012, PTNY and the Canal Corporation have recognized those end-to-enders who have traveled the entire length of the Erie Canalway Trail from Albany to Buffalo or from Buffalo to Albany. And since the start of the recognition program, we've had almost 5,000 travelers register, each with their own unique adventure to share. This recognition program has really provided us with some invaluable data. It's a true snapshot of who could be riding through your community. So who are these end-to-enders? Well, as you can see, about 60% of them are between the ages of 50 and 69. About 53% of them are from households who earn more than $100,000 a year. They tend to travel in small groups. 79% are in groups of 1 to 3 people. However, there are some organized tours that are out there that do bring larger groups. Some are in the 20 to 30 range. And then of course, every summer, there's the Cycle the Erie Canal Bike Tour, which Parks and Trails New York organizes, that brings 600 people on an 8-day adventure across the state from Buffalo to Albany. They spend time and money in these canal side communities. 75% of the people who did an end-to-end tour spent 6 or more nights in communities along the trail. 88% of them spent at least one night in a hotel or B&B, and most of them spent their entire trip in hotels or B&Bs. There's only about a quarter who primarily camped in tents on their trip. 51% of them spent more than $500 per person per trip. And we also ask riders how they hear about the trail. And this underscores 2 major points that are going to we'll get back to in the recommendations. The first is that you need to have a digital presence. 36% of end-to-enders who we asked said that they first heard about the trail, and they were only able to select one choice. They said they first heard about the trail through a website or through social media. And then an additional 37% said that they first heard about the trail through word of mouth or from a friend who had ridden the trail. While the economic potential is great, the health benefits are even more staggering. The health benefits of physical activity are incredibly important and broad-reaching. And by designing our streets to support safe, activity-friendly routes for people walking, biking, rolling, moving actively using assistive devices, we can provide more opportunity for physical activity as part of people's daily routines. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Allison Schwartz, Project Director from Herkimer County HealthNet. Allison?
Thank you, Dylan. And welcome everybody to Herkimer County and the Bicyclists Bring Business event hosted in the Village of Ilion. So at one point in my tenure at HealthNet, and this point was brought up a little while ago, just a little while ago, and only a very few years, this community saw one of the largest gaps in this section of the Canalway Trail. And so to see this section filled in a number of different areas in Herkimer County, the Mohawk Valley, and then the most recent one filled in the Village of Ilion is certainly spectacular to see. I just wanted to say thank you to the folks at Parks and Trails New York for partnering with us. It's been a pleasure working with you and doing the bike around event in Ilion last month. So Herkimer County HealthNet, just to give you a little bit of a background on who we are, our mission is to improve the health and well-being of individuals who live, work, play, and learn in Herkimer County. So our goal is to create healthier communities within our county, as well as creating healthier people. And so when you have healthier people in your community, you have better ambassadors. And so these folks who are better ambassadors, who represent our area and feel better about themselves and feel better about Herkimer County, we are better ambassadors to people who come in from outside of the area. And so I felt that this was a great opportunity for us to be partners with Parks and Trails New York. And in understanding all of this, we can have, or we can enjoy better economic development as a result of healthier people and healthier communities. And so this is a great opportunity to be partners with Parks and Trails New York. So just give you a little bit of a background on some of the activities that we do here at Herkimer County HealthNet. We understand that not only eating healthy is a component to being a healthier person, but also physical activity as well as stress prevention are other key components to better health. Herkimer County HealthNet is holds a series of classes for individuals who could be struggling. And so our goal is to help those folks in some of those areas so that they can become healthier, enjoy a better quality of life, and as well as be more welcoming to the folks who come to this area and enjoy the Canal Way Trail. So some of these classes consists of, we call it the Living Well series. And so there are 4 different classes that we are hosting now this coming winter, and we're going through some classes right now this fall. One of them is Living Well with Diabetes. So this is a course for those who have type 2 or who have prediabetes. And these are all self-management type of classes. And so the folks who teach you about managing diabetes or preventing diabetes if you're at a borderline. Some of the components of the diabetes class is being able to manage stress, manage emotions. Fatigue and depression have much to do with the success of self-management. Understanding, having sick days and going to work or staying home from work, and the impact that diabetes has on this type of activity, just going to work. So as you see on the screen, you'll see all the different components, and I don't want to read through all of the different components of each of these classes, but if you could read these points ahead of you, you will see what each of these points are. So we have living well with diabetes, living well with chronic pain, and living well with a chronic condition. And what I don't have here, and what I'd like to see more of, is we also host a smoking cessation living well course that we'd love to see more interest in, because that too is also a component of where we think we can create healthier people and healthier communities if less people are smoking. And so, like I said before, these are self-management classes so that you're able to work on some of these components on your own, and you're given the tools to perhaps reduce anxiety, reduce stress, improve your health through physical activity and nutrition, as well as increasing the hours of sleep that you get at night. And some of the people that have completed these classes have all said that at some points that they feel better about themselves, that they've seen some weight loss, and certainly a better quality of life. So when you take part in these types of classes, you become more confident, and you do see accomplishments from each class, even if it's small steps. You become more prepared to exercise. You're given the components and the resources and tools to enjoy what our area has to offer, including the Canal Way Trail right here in the Village of Ilion. And so that confidence and feeling better about yourself, you can also become better ambassadors for our area. And thank you again, Parks and Trails New York, and thank you to all of those of you who signed up for Bicyclists Bring Business. Back to you, Dylan.
Thanks, Allison, and thank you for the great work that Herkimer County HealthNet does. You know, it really is an important piece of having you know, the people in the community as they get out on the trail and become more comfortable with being on the trail from a health perspective. They see the benefits that it could bring and how you're able to attract cycle tourists to the community and create those economic development opportunities. So looking at those economic and health gains that the trail has to offer a community, we get the why, but now for the how. What are the things that Ilion needs to do to get bicycle tourists to stop in and to patronize local businesses? So we broke this into 4 major categories. The connection between the trail and the town, and what is the physical infrastructure to get people off the trail and into the community. Once they're in the community, what's the experience for them? Are there things for them to do? Is the community giving them an experience that meets their needs? What are you doing to attract people to the community in the first place? How are you promoting an area? What are you telling people, and what are you telling the world about what your community offers? And then how do we go about doing this as a collective? You know, how do you build the movement within a community to better attract cycle tourism and to encourage people to connect with their community and to become a part of you know, what is necessary to make all of this happen? So we're going to look at what Ilion is and isn't doing for each of those categories. So I'm going to jump right into the assessment that we conducted. And we're also going to go through some of the recommendations that the assessment brought to bear, and some of the things that Ilion can do to help create a more bike-friendly community and to have bicyclists bring business to the community. So Sasha talked about the investments that have been made in the trail system, both across the state and in the Mohawk Valley. Ilion now has these great paved off-road trails where none existed. And you've got residents from Utica to Little Falls that now have this safe place for recreation along the canal. Cycle tourists also are able to enjoy this seamless off-road experience while taking in the beauty of the Mohawk Valley. But what else does it have? What else is it lacking? You know, and our assessment looked at these kinds of questions. And also questions like, does signage point riders in the right direction? Are there services and amenities and like water and restrooms available? How safe and in what condition are the roads between trails and business areas? Do the intersections accommodate people of all ages and abilities? So our first step for determining exactly what a community does well and what they need to improve on to attract business from cycle tourists is to host this bicycle and pedestrian bike around and assessment. And so as we mentioned in the intro, at the end of August, we were joined by an incredible group of knowledgeable stakeholders, and we conducted this 3-mile bike round, and you can see the route on the slide there. And I just, again, want to thank everybody who attended. We really had some great discussions. Everybody's contribution to the assessment was critical. Now, the assessment helped us better understand how a visiting cyclist might experience a community based on the ease with which they can navigate from the trail into the community and what services and amenities they'll have access to when they get there. The assessment analyzes the bike friendliness of how the trail and the community interact at the trailhead and gateway, connecting from the trail to the downtown or the community center, and then once you're within the downtown area. And obviously there's a wide range in how you define each of these locations for each community, but on the slide was roughly what we looked at for Ilion. Now, within each section of the assessment we did, there's various questions that get to what bicycle tourists are looking for when exiting a trail and entering a community. But the point of the assessment wasn't so much to, check a box. It wasn't to necessarily go through and say, yep, oh, they get a 75, they get a C grade. It was really more to spur discussion. It was to get participants thinking and analyzing, how does this community present itself to potential visitors? So the following slides are going to walk through our findings and our recommendations. So we started by putting ourselves in the shoes of visiting cycle tourists. And by looking at what the first things that a cycle tourist who's experiencing Ilion for the first time will encounter. Is what we call the gateway to a community. Ilion very clearly has a gateway. It's the Ilion Marina. And the Ilion Marina is a place that's got informative signage. It offers amenities that encourage riders to stop. It's got park benches. There's some bicycle fix tools. It's got a display, a bulletin board or a kiosk actually, that has a town map showing a map of local businesses and services. It's also a great place to park if you're driving to access the trail within that community. A gateway is a place that traveling cyclists, they make a judgment call. Are they going to keep going on the trail? Or are they going to get off the trail to go into the community to find food, lodging, water, restrooms, whatever it is they might need? And that's what the marina functions as for Ilion. It's in an ideal location in terms of the interface between the trail and the community. It's right along the trail. The trail runs right through the parking lot of the Ilion Marina. And it's on one of the main roadways that connects from between the trail and downtown Ilion. And it's clear once where you are. When you pull in, there's no mistaking. You're at the Ilion Marina. It's also just a beautiful spot. It's right along the river. There's a restaurant, Voss's on the dockside that's there. There's picnic benches. So we started our assessment out by heading just a bit west before returning as an eastbound cyclist. Most cyclists on the Erie Canalway Trail travel from west to east. It's the way that you're going to have the wind at your back the whole time. And we wanted to experience, if you're one of these west to east cyclists, what's it like to arrive first in Ilion? And it's a little bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. There is a beautiful newly installed fix-it station with a map of the region and a map of the whole state that was installed by the Canal Corp as part of the Empire State Trail Project. However, there's no directional signage that tells cyclists which way to go to get to downtown or what you might find once you get downtown. And as you continue east, right past that kiosk, you go under a roadway bridge, and that bridge is what separates where the kiosk is from the marina. But we think that one recommendation to help orient riders would be to install a sign that identifies the bridge as Route 51 to really help truth test. If you're a cyclist and you're looking at a map, you want them to be able to be confident that what they're looking at on their map is what they're seeing in front of them. And having a sign that just says Route 51 on the bridge as you go under it is a great way to have that happen. As riders approach the marina, they're going to have access to this local map of the village that I mentioned. It details some basic services and amenities, things like the location of the post office and the library and some local businesses. However, just based on where it's located, it's something that you could easily overlook. As you're coming from west to east, it could be very easy for you to ride right past it. So we recommend installing a sign that just alerts riders that there is information available here, that this kiosk is located where it is. The Ilion Marina does make a very good first impression on visitors. It's a beautiful newly paved trail. It's of high quality. However, the one thing I will say is that when we visited, the grassy area alongside the trail was a little overgrown. So we want to, as one recommendation, would like to ensure that the village and the town and the State Canal Corporation work together to ensure that mowing and other maintenance is done on a regular basis, and that things that come up a little bit more kind of unscheduled, things like down trees and branches and sweeping to clear the trail of debris, that those things are happening on a timely basis. But we also recommend identifying, and PTNY is here to help with this, a group of volunteers who may be interested in the beautification of the trail. We run the New York State Canalway Trail Adopt a Trail program for stretches of the trail, like the trail in Ilion, that are owned by the State Canal Corporation. Our trail adopters do a wide range of things like picking up litter, trimming brush, removing fallen branches, maintaining signs. Then we have some that even go above and beyond. We have a group in Lockport that at the various trailheads, they've installed bicycle part sculptures, and they've installed some native pollinator-friendly plants that really just are, it's an incredible experience when you travel on the trail through their stretch. If anybody on the call is interested in adopting a stretch of trail that would be eligible for this program, reach out to us at PTNY. My email and Rebecca's email will be on the screen at the end of the presentation. And you should all have our emails from when you registered. One thing I will say as well that the marina is lacking, and it does have the restaurant, but it doesn't really have an information center. The best gateways that we've encountered have information and they have takeaway maps available. And it's often in the same place as bathrooms or showers, which I will mention that the Ilion Marina has both bathrooms and showers available. Now, obviously constructing a physical welcome center isn't always possible. It's a lot of money in a lot of instances, but one thing you can do to kind of help with that is to establish more of a welcoming presence by getting volunteers to serve as ambassadors for Ilion. They can join our network of reliable Canalway Trail ambassadors across the state and serve as cheerleaders, educators, and really just resources for the trail. So we talked for a little bit about the gateway, but that's obviously only a piece. So the next thing we looked at for Ilion and that we consider for how bicycle friendly a place is how do you get from the trail to the community? How do you get to where the businesses are? And first, you have to tell people where that is. Where are these businesses? And at its most fundamental level, you're going to do that with signs. And that's what we looked for first. Now, did the signs that we saw tell you what you're looking for within a community? How far do you have to go to get to businesses or other amenities? What kinds of services are available? Are there bathrooms? Are there ATMs? Is there a post office? Is there a laundromat? Is there any routing information that says this way is the way that you're going to want to go to get to downtown? And we found that for much of the route we took, the signage was lacking. There's no real wayfinding signage. There's nothing that points out the businesses that cycle tourists might want to visit. There's nothing that even directs those who are new to the community where the downtown area is. And signage is important. It's not just a way to give people directions or to give people that base information, but it's a way to entice cyclists to get off the trail and to go in and visit a community. It's a way to tell a story about a community. But we encourage adding wayfinding signage to some of the major roadways, specifically Central Avenue, which we've talked about a couple of times. We're going to talk about it a bit more, but also to Main Street, coming into town from the east and the west side. And it should be of a scale that's visible by cyclists. The signage is an opportunity to incorporate this community branding, really to help develop that community identity for Ilion in a way that Ilion can present itself to potential visitors. Obviously, signage is only a small piece of the puzzle. You know, to get people to travel from the trail into downtown, you need to give them a safe way to get there. And right now, cycling conditions on Central Avenue are not that favorable. They're not the worst that we've ever seen, but they're not great. For those who aren't familiar, Central Avenue is New York State Route 51. It's got a single drive lane on either side of a center turn lane. It's got sidewalks on either side with lampposts and telephone lines. It's about 60 feet wide. Now, when our bike round went down Central, we felt that the center turn lane actually helped us feel a little safer. It gave cars some room to go around and pass us safely. And, you know, cars should always leave 3 foot of clearance when they're overtaking a cyclist. Now, some of that might have been because we were in a larger group. You know, there was, however, 15 or 20 of us riding together, and that some of us were the kind of strong and confident riders that are comfortable riding in more challenging circumstances. But if you're going to attract more cyclists into town, we have to look at some options. And the 2 images we have on the screen show a couple of examples of ways that roadway space could be reallocated to provide more space to cyclists and to allow them to more safely access downtown. What we think is probably the best option would be a separated bike lane. And we think it might fit here. Federal highway guidelines for where a separated bike lane is appropriate to be installed say that the most critical considerations are reducing conflicts with turning vehicles, providing sufficient width for safe operations, and ensuring ease of maintenance. You want to make sure that this behavior by all of the street users is predictable to any other kind of user. Now, to make the case for such a change, The village and New York State DOT would have to study the current conditions. Look at things like roadway speeds, traffic patterns, and mode share. How many bicycles and pedestrians are there, and how many can you reasonably expect to attract? Studies would look at things like whether other roadway configurations might suit Central Avenue better, given the potential for changes in traffic patterns as we're, coming out of COVID. If we're looking at COVID and we're saying we're not sure if we're ever going to get back to what we call the old normal, if people are going to work from home more, are we going to see less vehicular travel on this roadway overall? Or are we going to see just the travel change? Is it going to be more evenly distributed throughout the day so you don't have that morning peak and that afternoon peak? That's when you've got these real busy times. Or Ilion could even look at some more creative solutions, and they wouldn't even have to look that far for inspiration. Just over in Syracuse, where they built part of the Empire State Trail directly on the median of Erie Boulevard, it's this phenomenally innovative design solution. Didn't really exist anywhere else before Syracuse did it. The underlying principle, though, is if you want to attract business from cyclists, you need to make sure that they can safely travel along Central Avenue, that they can safely get from the trail to downtown. Now, obviously, reconstructing a highway to add in a separated bike lane is a major investment and would be a major change for a community. So one thing we recommend doing is hosting a temporary demonstration project that gives local drivers a chance to become familiar with roadway changes before they're permanently implemented, and to see what the impacts are on things like traffic volumes and speeds, and on bicycle and pedestrian use of the corridor. Now, we hosted one of these down in Poughkeepsie last year, and it helped illustrate to area residents and to local officials that there's room for a two-way protected bike lane on one of Poughkeepsie's downtown main streets, that you can encourage more people to use their bikes and slow vehicular traffic. And that through this project, we were able to demonstrate to the community what was possible by transforming their streetscape and what could be done to enhance connectivity between bicyclists and pedestrians. And this is a very similar case to what we're talking about in Ilion. It provided a connection between their downtown business area and the Empire State Trail. PTNY also has a traffic calming toolkit that we'll send out a link to as the follow-up to the webinar, that it can help municipal leaders understand and evaluate various bicycle infrastructure designs. Now, aside from some physical changes, there's some other smaller low-cost improvements that can make riding on Central Avenue more enjoyable for riders. And the thing that stood out the most is routine street sweeping. When we were there, Central Avenue, there was a lot of debris, a lot of just kind of random things in the part of the road where cyclists are likely to be riding. So cleaning that up can ensure that cyclists are able to safely ride and don't have to worry about dodging something in the road that could potentially put them into a conflict with a motorist. Now, we also looked at whether Central was even the best place for bike infrastructure, or if there was an alternate routing that riders could be directed to. One that we looked at was along Pine Street, Pleasant Avenue, Clark Street, and West Street as a way to kind of loop around Central and still get to downtown. Now, if that's something that is of interest and does get pursued, we recommend routing or marking that routing and turning it into what's called a bicycle boulevard. Now, a bicycle boulevard is a quiet, slow traffic street. It's marked with things that give bicycle travel priority. Things like signs, pavement markings, speed and volume management measures, things that discourage through trips by motor vehicles and create comfortable, safe places for cyclists to ride. Apologies. Talking a lot and going to drink a little bit of water just to make sure I'm able to keep going. So the connection's obviously undoubtedly an important part of getting bicyclists to bring business, but you can't just stop there. You have to look at the final piece, and that's what happens once bicyclists get downtown. There's a few factors that matter for inviting bicyclists to stay and to spend their money. These include things like, again, the safety and the rideability of the roadways. Are there amenities available? Are there safe places to park a bike while using those amenities? Are there businesses in the community that meet the needs of cycle tourists? Both things like restaurants and bars and lodging, but other basics as well. Things like laundromats, bike shops or hardware stores, pharmacies. And once you've convinced cyclists to come off the trail and into their community, and you've gotten them there safely, then you need to give them really a positive experience. You need to delight them with what they see and do, and make sure that they enjoy and that they're then going to in turn tell others about. We talked earlier about how important word of mouth is, we want to make sure that these cyclists that come to your community are telling others about the time that they spent in that community, and in a good way. We don't want people going back and saying, oh, never go to that place again. So one thing that we did note in Ilion is that they lacked any kind of bike lanes. They didn't have striped, they didn't have separated, and there was only one place in Ilion that we saw any kind of share the road or bicycles in lane signage. So we recommend installing signage that says bicycles in lane to reinforce for motorists that they should expect bicyclists on roads and that remind them of the obligation that they have to exercise caution around bicyclists. Now, we've talked about signage a handful of times and the importance of having signage that connects cycle tourists with the services they need. And the village has plenty of those services. It's got laundry, it's got banks, it's got a library, it's got a pharmacy. Now, there's also some great attractions that people will be looking for when they're in the community. There's places like Russell Park. There's a fishing access site along Steel Creek. The village could benefit from integrating signage around the community that directs visitors, and this is true for all visitors, not just cycle tourists, to those services and to those attractions. Now, after a day exploring on bike, either if it's on the Canalway Trail or maybe you're doing some mountain biking up in Russell Park, those visitors are going to want to hop off their bike and find something to eat. Now, one major thing that we find helps attract cyclists in communities across the state is having a major centerpiece or a significant attraction. Now, we see this in places all across the state. You've got Lockport, which has the Flight of 5 locks. You've got Cohoes Falls in Cohoes. You've got the Erie Canal Museum in Syracuse, Fort Stanwix in Rome. I could spend 10 minutes or longer listing them all. I'm not going to, don't worry. And that's more true for Ilion than just about any other place on the canal. There's one facility that, as much as anywhere, it's really the centerpiece of the community, and that, of course, is the Remington Arms Factory. Now, this is a somewhat controversial site, and that's understandable, given that there's passionate views on both sides of the gun control debate, and that there's challenging circumstances currently in which the factory and the employees find themselves. But the history of Ilion and the history of Remington Arms are inextricably linked, and it's a history that's going to be of interest to visitors. On our bike round, we stopped outside what's marked on maps as the Remington Visitor Center. Now, the facility offered visitor tours at some point, but other than the words "visitors welcome," it was not clear if tours were still available or if anyone would be welcome at all. Now, some of that might be due to COVID restrictions, but we recommend that Remington Arms is really used as the centerpiece of generating tourism in Ilion, both through the physical location of the visitor center, but also through a robust online presence. The Herkimer County Historical Society should be a piece of that. They should be an integral part of telling that story. And one important hook that we think would go a long way to attracting cyclists is that the Remington Arms plant was actually used to produce bicycles. Another hook that we think will be of interest to riders coming through is that, do you know that the Erie Canal, the old route of the enlarged Erie Canal, actually went right through the site that's now the Remington Arms Factory? It ran right down the middle of it. And telling that story, tying it into how the factory and the city of Ilion, or the village of Ilion, grew alongside the Erie Canal, that's something that riders continually tell us they love to hear about, the history of the communities and the history of the canal and how the two are inextricably linked. So Ilion could do a much better job of telling that story, and Remington is the centerpiece of that story. Now, it is hard to visit a place like Ilion and not wonder what it used to look like. The so-called urban renewal of the 60s and 70s inflicted some severe trauma on so many places, and Ilion as much as anywhere else, and these places haven't recovered yet. Now, one of the centerpieces of Ilion's urban renewal efforts was the creation of the Central Plaza. This was supposed to be the new economic center of Ilion, but it was a pretty sleepy, underused space when we were there. There wasn't much happening at all. That being said, we did feel that it really had the potential to serve as a hub for the community. There's space that should be attractive for new businesses, but as it's set up now, it's a deterrent to touring cyclists. There's signage right as soon as you get there that says no bikes allowed. That's something that if I saw as a touring cyclist, I'd say, if I'm not allowed, then I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to keep going. So we think instead a sign that says dismounting, asking cyclists to dismount would be more appropriate. And it would encourage them to maybe stop and park their bike at one of the racks that's in the central plaza. Send more of a welcoming message rather than sending a message asking them to go, telling them they're not welcome. So obviously I've talked for a while about bicyclists bring business, and I've talked about just about everything other than businesses themselves. And that's not an accident. There's a lot of pieces that need to be in place for bicyclists to bring business to a community. But obviously you'd need the businesses too, and they need to do their part as well. It is essential to have the kinds of businesses that cyclists are looking for. You need to have things like restaurants, bars, lodging, bike shops, and hardware stores can fill that same niche as well. You maybe need to have laundromats. Touring cyclists are going to look for a place to clean their laundry. And you need to make sure that the businesses are set up to meet the needs of cyclists. Now, for the Canalway Trail, Parks and Trails New York and the New York State Canal Corporation run the Bike Friendly New York Business Certification Program. And this program looks at some basic criteria that a business must meet to be deemed bike friendly. These include things like having safe, secure bike parking, having some basic knowledge of local cycling information, things like how to get back to the trail or where the nearest bike shop is, and having a physical location that's open to the public with posted hours. And there's a number of other things that businesses can do to go above and beyond that and be welcoming and friendly to cyclists. And something as simple as like offering a place for a cyclist to charge their phone and promoting that they offer it, that can really make a huge difference. And in fact, we actually already have 2 certified bike-friendly businesses right in Ilion. The Ilion True Value Hardware Store offers some tools that riders may need. It's got a convenient location right downtown. It's got some basic bike repair essentials. And the Ilion Public Free Library, in addition to just being a gorgeous building, is a great resource for the community. It's in a convenient location on a quieter side street that's a little more comfortable to ride on. There is a bike rack right outside the front door. So these 2 businesses really are resources, but we think there's a number of other businesses that are also good candidates to become bike-friendly businesses. These are places like Voss's at the Marina, the Farmhouse Restaurant, Dom's Delights Ice Cream Shop. Now, to register as a bike-friendly business, it's a quick, simple form, and that's available at ptny.org/bfny. And we'll include the link to that again in what we send around at the end of the presentation. You're going to also need the business community to work together. We're going to talk about partnerships in a little bit, but businesses should be supporting other businesses and really building a network of places around Ilion that direct potential customers to the different places that might meet their needs. So most of what I've talked about so far has been physical improvements, things like signage or roadway changes. But as we know, we live in a digital age. Obviously, this meeting would normally have been in person, but we're able to have it via Zoom. And we've got folks from across the state that are able to join because of that. One of the first things that we discussed when we did our bike round was the importance of having digital information that's up to date and having a strong online presence. Cycle tourists are all going to have phones. They're all going to use their phones to determine where they want to go and what they want to see. Now, much like developing physical infrastructure, there's 2 big pieces to developing digital information. There's developing the content itself, and then there's getting people to that content. First, I wanted to highlight Ilion's website. Now, Ilion should have a section on their website with information about the trail. It should include links to local businesses and attractions, and keeping it up to date is a way to ensure that visitors feel confident in the information. On Ilion's website currently, if you go to their recreation and culture page, you'll see photos from a 2018 event. That doesn't really give much confidence if I'm a visitor that's coming from out of town, that the information on there is still going to be current, given everything, especially that's changed over the last 3 years. Now, for tourism-based businesses, having a listing on major travel sites such as Google Maps, Yelp, TripAdvisor, it's essential. By being listed on these sites, businesses make themselves visible to trail users and others who may be using them to plan trips or plan daily activities. It also is an opportunity for patrons to leave reviews and for businesses to engage with them by thanking reviewers or addressing concerns. I know when I travel, I'm looking at the reviews, and if there's too many reviews that are giving it 1 star, I'm not going to stay at that place. Businesses should also have social media presences. It's the best way to engage with potential future customers and to draw customers in. For example, Voss's at the Marina is a great place for a quick bite. It's got a convenient location. It's right on the trail, got places to park your bike. You can sit by the river. It's wonderful, but they're losing out on potential customers when you compare their online presence to that of a place like the Hungry Chicken Country Store, which is a bike-friendly business in Rotterdam in Schenectady County. You need to be active. You need to be persistent. You need to be responding to commenters and responding to those who are sending messages, asking questions. You need to be showing off what it is that you have to offer, and you need to be telling people why they want to come to your business. There's also a growing trend in creating online resources that can be accessed via QR code. Now, if Ilion's businesses banded together to create one page that would serve as a landing page, or if there's existing pages that already have this information or other information that you're going to want potential customers to access, putting a QR code on a poster or in other public places is going to make it easier for customers to access that information, really driving traffic to the information. And that traffic is what turns into new customers. Now, creating this positive experience that we talked about for cyclists and for other trail users is going to need to be a collaborative effort. Gone over some of the things that you can do, but who is going to do this? Who's responsible for carrying this message forward? Who is going to be building this movement within Ilion to make these changes happen? Now, of course, PTNY and the various stakeholders that have conducted the bike round are going to be a part of it, but we're not going to be able to do it alone. There's already a network of people around that are aware of the potential for bicyclists to bring business to Ilion, folks that we've engaged with throughout this process. Everybody on this webinar now, folks like agency staff, New York State DOT, Canal Corporation, folks like the Herkimer United Counties Transportation Council, the business community. They all are aware of this ongoing effort, and they all need to be engaged on an ongoing basis. We're all resources, though. To make this happen, you need to have local champions that move the effort along. Having a core group that's involved in organizing and executing the first steps, but also that offers residents the opportunity to be involved by encouraging them to offer input and feedback throughout the process. The first step that everybody on this call today can take to move this along is to share the presentation out with someone who wasn't able to attend today. And as I mentioned, it is being recorded. It's going to be up on our YouTube channel. We're going to share it out, a link to it with everybody next week. Share it with someone who you think should be involved with this effort. Now, the assessment was just one example of something that a group of dedicated individuals can pursue to evaluate existing conditions in Ilion. And we'll share a report with our findings on Ilion, but there's more research that can be done. Now, we recommend conducting trail user counts. Sasha talked about the counts that we've already done, but it never hurts to have additional data that provides more information on the popularity of the trail. The information is powerful to then bring to decision makers and to share with them and demonstrate this is something that your constituency, whatever that constituency may be, this is something that they want. Now, we're happy to advise those interested in conducting manual counts. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions. My email is going to be on the last slide of the presentation. We also recommend reaching out to folks like New York State DOT or to the town of German Flats to determine what are some of the best ways to conduct pedestrian or bike counts and where are some of the best locations to do them actually on roadways. We also think that those involved in building a movement can consider hosting or conducting a visitor survey to better understand the potential market of who's shopping at businesses now and who are you missing. And a visitor survey provides information to help those local businesses and to help municipal leaders provide a high quality visitor experiences and to establish baseline data the first time you do it and then track performances over time. Now, looking at bicycle and pedestrian policies is also going to be a major aspect in establishing Ilion as a bike-friendly community. Policy changes will have to come from those partners involved in advocating for Ilion. And you'll need to get support from the residents of the Village of Ilion and nearby residents. Communicating that desire for change to local leaders is a great way to demonstrate that there's this interest and that there's a need to have these changes. I will note that Ilion does have a complete streets policy, which is great. It means that all future projects in Ilion done by the village need to prioritize and need to consider the needs for safe access of all roadway users, regardless of age, ability, or what kind of transportation, what kind of vehicle they're using, or if they're walking. Ilion also is in the process of working on a update to its comprehensive plan through funding from New York State Department of State's local waterfront revitalization program. That effort is going to establish a community vision for the waterfront, for downtown and adjacent neighborhoods. And these are pieces that are already in place that Ilion can build off of and work in collaboration with to allow Ilion to benefit from the potential businesses that cyclists can bring. Now, with community support for making Ilion more bike friendly, it really set up to bring that engaging conversation to decision makers. And obviously we already had the assemblyman. He's already a champion. He's on the side of making this happen. He was with us for the bike run. Now, these conversations can happen as a result of direct outreach to local offices, or they can be part of an organized lobby day. Now, PTNY recommends that if you want to be part of building the movement for trails, join us for our trail advocacy efforts that begin at the beginning of each year. Broadly, our message each year is that we need to work on building connections between the Empire State Trail, other regional trail networks, and the communities that they go along and through. This is exactly what we're talking about here today for Ilion. And the investments need to be made in the construction of new trails and in the maintenance and enhancement of existing trail corridors. So obviously, everything we're talking about costs money. And we didn't forget about that. We are going to bring back Sasha from the New York State Canal Corporation, who's going to talk about a number of funding opportunities that are available for communities along the Erie Canalway Trail, such as Ilion, to pursue these projects. Sasha?
Hi, thank you. Really great list of recommendations and overview of what we saw in Ilion. Thank you for putting together such a concise presentation on that. I know there was a lot of information we collected and a lot of input we received. So in terms of funding opportunities offered through the Canal Corporation, annually, the Canal Corporation offers a Canalway grant program in the amount of $1 million. This grant goes to support locally driven development and improvement projects as part of the Regional Economic Development Councils and the annual CFA awards process. CFA is for Consolidated Funding Application. So again, yeah, each year we provide $1 million in competitive grants to communities and non-for-profits for projects that, as listed below, expand public access, increase recreational use, improve services for water and trail users, enhance connections between the canal and the trail, enhance visitor services, adapt and celebrate historic infrastructure, and stimulate private investment along the canal. And if we go to the next slide, this year's CFA, so in 2021, we prioritize projects that align with the Reimagine the Canal's goals, and that includes promoting resiliency against environmental challenges, economic development, which promotes active recreation, tourism, and revitalization in canal-side communities, projects that enhance connectivity between the Empire State Trail and the waterway and waterfronts, and also projects that celebrate the canal system as a 21st century waterway for future generations. So when we talk about eligible projects and our priorities, you can certainly see how many of the recommendations outlined by Dylan, and that will also be outlined in the forthcoming Parks and Trails New York Bicyclists Spring Business Report for Ilion, align really nicely with the objectives of our grant program. It also highlights the need for local and community support. Again, we fund projects that are born out of community efforts. So having those who are participating on the call being advocates, advocating for connectivity, advocating for the things that are outlined in the report is very important. I want to move on to the grant requirements. I'm not going to talk about all of the requirements, but I am going to identify things that are worth noting. So our grant can only go to capital improvements, which means construction, repair, and replacement. Another requirement that is worth noting is that we do require 50% match. However, unlike many other state grants, we allow state funding and in-kind contributions to count towards a match. So if you have a municipal workforce that is prepared to maybe help with laying new asphalt as part of a trail construction project, that would count towards the match requirement. There's one other state grant that we often see coupled with our canal grant, and that is the local water revitalization program. I'm going to call that LWRP. That funding comes from the Department of State. And I know that Ilion is a recent recipient of the LWRP grant. So there's opportunity there to leverage that funding and hopefully help elevate maybe a future project that you would put forward for a canal grant that would connect that funding to a canal grant proposal. So that's a unique situation that Ilion is in. A new round will be announced. So our 2021 CF Canal grant closed about a month ago. We will have selected our applicants by the end of the year, and then we'll announce a new round early in 2022 with a deadline for applications by midsummer, which gives those who are participating on the call and the community time to really develop a plan. So that's great. You have almost a full year to work towards something. I do want to give a few examples of successful canal grant projects from the past few years. These are examples of communities that were seeking to create connectivity, close gaps, and also enhance user experience. The first one on the left-hand side of your screen is the Fairport Canal Gateway project. This project increased access to canal side attractions in the village of Fairport. So this was done via a new ADA accessible dock, also establishing accessible kayak launches and a new boat ramp. They've also put in a trail observation deck and installed wayfinding signage as well as a kiosk. And this is a really great example of a community that built a more synergistic connection between the waterway and the trail. So it was more accessible to get to the water from the trail, and again, from the water to the trail, as well as building in accommodations that made it friendly to stay around and hang out near the waterway, which is also something that I feel like is very complementary to what could be done down in Ilion's waterfront. We also have in the middle the Fulton Canal Corridor Multi-Use Trail. This project established two multi-use trails along the Oswego Canal. It was the Pathfinder Canal Towpath Trail and the Canal View Bridge Walk Trail. This funding was leveraged against LWRP, again, that Department of State funding, which was used a year prior to fund a downtown canal landing marina and gazebo and park. So again, we saw local waterfront revitalization funding go into a community, develop a little municipal park, a gazebo, connect in with a marina, again, the connection to the water, but then a trail that connected all three. And then lastly, we have the Stillwater Riverside Trail Community Linkage Project. And in that instance, canal funding went to create a linkage trail through the town of Stillwater from the historic Saratoga battlefield site to the city of Mechanicville. So this project also included wayfinding signage and some sharrows for any on-road section. So this is another great example of maybe how we could bring people, fund a project that would connect people to maybe a local trail. I know that in Ilion, there is a mountain bike trail not too far away from our Erie Canalway Trail. So maybe thinking about ways we can connect the trail, the Erie Canalway Trail through the town up to the mountain bike area. So these are just kind of like examples of what can be done with our funding. So the other thing that's happening is the Canal Corporation, Reimagine the Canals, are exploring funding opportunities for smaller projects. Again, our funding is the Canalway Grant minimum project. The minimum you can submit is $25,000. which does miss a lot of these like smaller yet critical improvements that can be made in a community. Things that have a large impact. Dylan talked about a lot of them. Road striping, having flashing signs at crossings so that drivers are aware that you're, driving through a trail crossing. Wayfinding signage. All of this typically falls below the $25,000 threshold. So we're looking at ways that we can help fund those types of projects through a competitive grant program. We haven't figured out the full details of it yet, but I would expect to hear something from the Canal Corporation and Reimagine by late winter, hopefully with applications being accepted in the summer of 2022. So I just really encourage everybody who is participating in this forum to take the time to look at the report once it's issued and kind of go through that report and see what recommendations fall in line with the Canal grant program and also local waterfront revitalization. I would encourage you to maybe, try to come up with a comprehensive plan for your downtown so that it could be submitted all at once. We like funding projects with a big impact, even if there are a lot of small little changes in a number of areas can make a big difference. So with that, I'm going to pass it back off to Dylan.
Thanks, Sasha. There really is some great opportunities out there with the Canal Corp and their partner agency, the Power Authority, have made available. And I want to thank again everybody for tuning in tonight to our presentation on creating a bike-friendly community in Ilion. As I mentioned, we have some time at the end here for question and answers. If you can put the Q&A into either the chat or into the Q&A function, you should have buttons for each of those at the bottom of your screen. We'll go through those questions as they come in. I hope that you have a lot of food for thought from what we've presented on, and that you're going to be able to continue to carry these messages to additional stakeholders. Obviously, there's a lot of work that's still to be done, and to do it, it's going to require a collaborative partnership that looks at how we can accomplish both short and long-term goals. Now we can turn to some of these questions from the audience, and I'm going to introduce my colleague Rebecca, who's going to facilitate the Q&A portion of the presentation. Sasha and Allison, if you guys want to kind of put your videos on as well, because we may direct some of the question to you guys if that's appropriate. If there are any questions that aren't answered, we're happy to follow up again after the end of the presentation, but I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca to give us kind of run through the questions that are coming in.
Thanks, Dylan. A lot of really great information has been provided today. Allison, Sasha, even the assembly member, I know he tuned in for the majority of it. Just a lot of great conversation. I participated in the bike around and know all the information that got shared that day. And as Sasha said, to kind of encompass that in a presentation sometimes can be challenging. You can look out for our report that will have more information available. But I did want to kick it off. With that being said, we have thrown a lot at our audience today. So Dylan, I wanted to ask you this question. Obviously, creating a bike-friendly community along the Erie Canal Trail has a lot of components. It's very complicated. Steps are kind of interconnected. So you provided a great overview of this process, but what would you say is priority number one? Where should someone begin?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the first thing that needs to happen is to really identify who those champions are, identify who the partnerships and who's going to work together to kind of build off of the support and build off of the recommendations that we're going to be providing. As I indicated during the presentation, we're here to help, we're here to support, but having Ilion benefit from the economic development potential that the trail brings and benefit from the cyclists coming to the community, that's only going to work if Ilion wants to make it work, and so really identifying who those champions are and who is, the appropriate people within the community to lead that forward. Because then you can take a look at what some of the things are in the report, and we'll do this with our recommendations in the report. We'll identify which of these things are the more low-hanging fruit and either the more inexpensive or shorter term changes that can be done to really kind of push this along, and which are the things that might take a little bit longer or require a little bit more investment. So yeah, identifying that champion and really starting to dive into some of those low-hanging fruit. Those are the most important first things.
Dick. I did get a question from Linda Bell, who asked who she can reach out to about the Adopt a Trail program. I have my contact information will be at the end of the presentation. I encourage anyone to reach out to talk about the program. We typically like to get a good group together. So if Linda or others in the community want to be part of the Adopt a Trail program, we do encourage that collaborative effort. Obviously, inviting friends and family is great, but other community members, we've established some really good partnerships within communities just by connecting folks that get in touch with us, are interested in working along the trail. So my email will be at the end of the presentation. So if you're interested in the Adopt a Trail program, please reach out to me directly. And thank you, Linda, for the question. So we also, I would like to throw a question at Sasha. I know we have others represented from the from NYPA, and maybe they can jump in as well. I would love to hear more about Canal excursions and how it's directly benefiting Canal side communities. In particular, how can a community like Ilion work with Reimagine the Canals to develop something like this?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Great question. So I mentioned while I was in my presentation that, we had 7 excursions with 3,000 participants just in 2 months of running the program. So it did have a big impact. In the Mohawk Valley one that we ran at Yankee Hill, we had 400 people attend the program or, sign up for the paddle excursion. I have to imagine a lot of the people that came and participated also probably ended up grabbing lunch in nearby community. I don't have those figures off the top of my head. I don't think we track that, but it's certainly something that we did hear anecdotally from businesses that they did see increased visitation because of the excursions. So that was really great. In regards to maybe bringing excursion to Ilion, again, we are looking at doing fall. We are going to do fall excursions, and we are looking into doing winter excursions this coming season. And because of the success of the program, we will likely do summer excursions in 2022. There will be an issue of an RFQ, so a request for qualifications from vendors. However, we are certainly open to hearing recommendations from individuals and from communities. If you think that there is like this really great, unique experience and there's a vendor in your area that is able to provide that, I'm thinking about like a bike rental shop or an e-scooter place or somebody who rents kayaks. That would be a really great opportunity. If you know of those, you're welcome to email them to me. We'll mull them over. No promises, but we are looking for those types of activities as well as qualified vendors to submit applications.
It looks like some folks in the community might have some homework to do, but that's great to hear, Sasha. Thank you. Allison, we have a question for you. So you talked extensively about some of the Living Well classes that Herkimer County HealthNet offers. And so how would you say that these classes help prepare residents to be more prepared to use the trail, to be out feeling confident doing something like bicycling?
Yes, the big question is, how do you feel? And so folks who take these classes or who participate in some of the other activities and resources that Herkimer County HealthNet has to offer generally tend to feel better, from confidence boosting to feeling emotionally, physically, mentally better. Some, like I said before during the classes, some have experienced weight loss. And so when an individual feels better about themselves, and these evidence-based classes work on little small increments of change. And so it's something that is built And so folks who build on that confidence would be more apt to taking part in physical activity outdoors, and then hopping on a bicycle and getting on the bicycle trail, on the Canalway Trail, and even the mountain biking trail that's not too far away as well. They're more apt to participate because they don't have to go into a gym, or they don't have to, not that there's anything wrong with gyms by any means, but if you're more confident, and you're going to be more confident in your own community and in your own familiar space. So I think that's a great way to participate, enjoy the trail, and then overall, I mean, you become better advocates of the trail and better ambassadors. And I hope I've answered that question. If we need more expansion, I'm certainly I'm certainly able to.
That was great. It's good to hear. I'm getting new to cycling myself more so this last summer. So I'm definitely gaining confidence. So we've got another question from the audience. But what can they expect after this? What's coming next, Dylan? Do you have anything, any more advice you'd like to offer, and what can they tune into?
Yeah, so we've talked a couple times about the report that's going to be coming out, and that's going to be detailing some of the recommendations that we've got for Ilion, or it's going to be detailing all of the recommendations we have for Ilion, and providing some more information on, like I said, you know, the time frame, the rough cost that's estimated for these various things, who's involved in making these things happen, you know, what the kind of potential barriers are, you know, just gets into more detail on what accomplishing these various recommendations that we have will entail. So we're gonna release that, you know, in the coming weeks, you know, once we've finished writing it up, and then that'll be something that really community members and advocates can take, and they can bring it around. They can bring around the recording of this webinar, and we'll be happy to share out the you know, the PowerPoint slides as well. And they can really kind of talk to folks and start to spread the gospel of Bicyclists Bring Business, you know, and really kind of spread the word. If there's another community meeting that you want to have us come to or have us talk to, that we can, you know, share this information out at, we're happy to do so. Get in touch with us via email. You know, we're really excited about the potential that Ilion has. I'm also excited to announce that in the coming weeks, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to release an updated version of our Bicyclists Bring Business Handbook. This is a guide for attracting bicyclists to New York's canal communities. The original version of this handbook was something that we released over a decade ago now. And so we're really looking forward to having this new handbook out, and that'll be something that we will be sending out to all of the attendees tonight, and sending it out to everybody that we can think of, because we really are excited by what is entailed in that handbook. And we want to make sure that all communities along the Canalway Trail, Ilion especially, but you know, but all of the communities are able to do everything they can to benefit from the influx of cyclists coming to the Canalway Trail. It's one of these things where a rising tide lifts all boats, or I don't know, a turning gear cranks all wheels or something. That's a little bit of a tortured metaphor, I suppose. But you know, just we think that the Canalway Trail, and when you've got these communities along the Canalway Trail, they really all can work together, and you can have the sum be greater, or the whole be greater than the sum of the parts. And so we envision this future where you've got this network of communities along the Canalway Trail that provide these services, and that people come and they're riding the trail, and they're able to ride into these communities and have their needs met, and then continue their ride. And that it's something that is a draw to cyclists, not just across the country, which it already is, but to folks from around the world who come and hear the history and are able to visit and see the scenic beauty of the state. So we really are excited about moving forward and helping Ilion better attract bicycle tourism, but also helping communities across the state do the same.
Fantastic. It sounds like they have a lot of resources coming their way. Thanks, Dylan. We do have one final question. Any other questions that flow in, we can certainly respond to directly. Like Dylan said, either tomorrow or early the following week. And it is directed at you, Dylan. So I know that we've been hosting B3 for over a decade, so I've certainly been able to look through some of the reports that we have from previous workshops. But someone is curious, have you seen a community set kind of a high standard that they were able to take the recommendations and turn them into reality? Do you have a community that stands out?
Yeah, a couple of places that have really done some great things after we've come there and hosted Bicyclists Bring Business in the community. We went to Glens Falls in 2019. It feels like forever ago. It was pre-pandemic, but we went to Glens Falls in 2019, and that's a place that we had hosted Bicyclists Bring Business in more than a decade prior. And our event there really was the spur for the creation of a group of local cycling advocates, the Warren County Safe and Quality Bicycling Association or organization. Thankfully, I think they have a shorter name now. I think they're Adirondack Cycling Advocates, which is rolls off the tongue a little easier, but they've really done a lot to try to help capitalize on the feeder canal trail and on the Warren County Bikeway that they have running through their community and really providing some bicycle infrastructure there. But another one that stands out and is probably the gold standard is Oneida. Oneida in Madison County really is just, they've done a lot of work to build their Oneida Rail Trail, which is a connector. The Erie Canalway Trail goes fairly close to Oneida, but it doesn't go through downtown. It doesn't go right through the community. And so there was a couple of abandoned rail corridors that did make that connection. And they've been able to tie them together and tie together a number of passionate advocates in the community and work with local businesses to really have this trail that builds and thrives off of its connectivity with the Erie Canalway Trail and really, is this great asset to the community. So Oneida is definitely one that stands out to me.
Thank you. We would encourage everyone to go to ptny.org/B3. We do have some of our reports from previous workshops there, and they're very interesting. So highly encourage you to visit that site. I'm sure it'll be a link that we include in our follow-up resources. But as I said, I think we're going to let everybody out like half an hour early. As Dylan said, everyone can get to dinner a little earlier. And with that, I'll hand it back to Dylan and thank Allison and Sasha and Dylan for answering some questions.
Yeah, I just want to again thank everybody for attending and joining us today. As promised, our email addresses are all on the slide here, and we'll send this information out. Again, it'll probably be early next week that we share it out with everybody. Thanks again to all. Yes, I see Bruce has in the chat. We will make the presentation available to everybody as well. But again, I just want to thank the participants. Thank you to Sasha for joining us today and being on the presentation. And also thank you to the New York State Canal Corporation and the Power Authority, whose support is necessary to make this event possible. And I also thank you to Allison for joining us both at the bike round and on the presentation and for her great informative presentation today. So thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope everybody has a good evening.
Thank you.